Hello, my name is Reverend Dr. May Elise Cannon. Today is Friday, May 10th. Today is day 217. I'm in Johannesburg, South Africa. Netanyahu has said that Israel can stand alone after President Biden warned that he would halt U.S. arms. He said that Israel is strong enough to fight on their own after President Biden had said that the U.S. had halted a shipment of arms last week. Israel has continued to move forward in its quote unquote limited assault on Rafah in South Gaza. So this is that long planned ground invasion that we've been following in the Gaza Strip. Netanyahu said, if we have to stand alone, we will stand alone. That was in a video message ahead of Israel's Independence Day, or what Palestinians call Nakba Day. That's coming up on the 15th of May. The Biden administration said that the United States would continue to provide Israel with defensive weapons, including those for the Iron Dome, so that it could protect itself from any potential attacks by neighboring countries or from Gaza, but that they would not support a large-scale operation in Rafah, adding that President Biden had instructed his team to, quote, continue working with Israel in order to inflict an enduring defeat, end quote, on Hamas, and also provided Israel with several alternatives on how to pursue Hamas operatives. The U.S. Secretary of State Blinken told Egyptian counterparts that the U.S. does not support the offensive in Rafah or the forced displacement of Palestinians from Rafah. UNRWA has said that 110,000 Palestinians have fled Rafah so far. From Israel's perspective, Netanyahu and his aides, the destruction of Hamas is their stated goal. That has been their goal from the beginning. Israel's military claims to have made progress, saying that they've dismantled 18 of 24 Hamas battalions since October 7th. But Hamas's top leaders and thousands of fighters have survived, according to Israeli reports. They report that they have fled to tunnels that are located under Rafah. International warnings have said that a Rafah invasion will be incredibly damaging to civilians, but Israeli leaders believe that a successful operation would change the strategic equation. So that's Israel's perspective. Israeli tanks have said that they have captured the main road that divides the east from the west in the city of Rafah, which essentially means that the entire eastern side of the city is now circled by the Israeli military. The IDF has said that Hamas's infrastructure was destroyed during a raid in Gaza City's Zaytun neighborhood as well. Hamas and other factions have said that they intend to increase their attacks on the Israeli Defense Forces in North Gaza in coming days, according to Palestinian sources. From the U.S. perspective, Biden and other Western countries, the destruction of Hamas is not realistic. The group's fighters are deep in fortified tunnels, that this would take months, if not years, that this is an unrealistic goal, that even if remaining fighters are created, that new ones would emerge, that not only are the benefits of trying to eradicate Hamas small, this is according to the Washington Post, but that the cost seems too large, that as Israel continues its attacks on Rafah, the hostages that are still being held would likely be in danger and could die, and that the humanitarian toll in Rafah, where Gazan refugees have fled, would be horrific. Smashing into Rafah, a Biden aide said yesterday, would not get to that sustainable and enduring defeat of Hamas, end quote. The U.S. floating pier, as of Tuesday, construction of the temporary pier was complete. According to the Pentagon, a CENTCOM temporary pause happened because of unsafe weather and swells. It was positioned outside of the port of Ashdod, several miles north of the Gaza border as of Tuesday. The U.S. had announced that the pier would take 60 days, that it would require 1,000 troops to build. This now will facilitate the about 90 truckloads of aid delivered to Gaza daily. And once it's fully operational, it'll only be 150 truckloads a day. And remember, the goal before October 7th was 500 truckloads a day. Gallant, the Minister of Defense in Israel, did not respond to President Biden's remarks, but he said that Israel's going to do whatever necessary to protect the citizens of Israel. He said, we have no other choice, we have no support, we have no other country. In terms of humanitarian shipments, yesterday, Thursday, a shipment left us to Gaza using that temporary pier. We found out that part of that ceasefire hostage fall through was because Hamas demanded a 12-week ceasefire when the agreement initially had caused for a 6-week pause. Israel had agreed to 6 weeks. Hamas demanded 12, according to CNN. Israeli officials were staunchly opposed to a longer pause. They said that it would be no different than agreeing to an effective end to the war. According to Health Ministry in Gaza, the death toll is now 34,943 Palestinians killed and 78,572 wounded since October 7th. That is a summary of the death toll. We talked about President Biden's CNN halting of offensive weapons, and the White House talking about Israel smashing into Rafah would not help defeat Hamas. Following the interview, Netanyahu said if Israel has to stand alone, that they would. Gallant also said, whatever the cost, we will ensure the existence of the state. We will turn he said, I turn and say to our enemies and our best friends, Israel cannot be subdued. And Ben-Gvir tweeted that Biden loves Hamas because of this whole question of whether or not the U.S. might withhold weapons. Herzog responded to Ben-Gvir's tweet and said that he was baseless, irresponsible, and insulting, and that he was damaging Israel's national security interest. So obviously there's discord within Israeli politics. Israel's former head of defense, production and procurement rejected the claim that the country could manage without U.S. arms. And the Biden administration's decision was an attempt to quietly signaled to Israel that they really need to reach a ceasefire deal with Hamas rather than move forward with a large-scale operation in Rafah. A U.S. official said, we weren't trying to break this out in the open, we were trying to handle this in a diplomatic way. A soon-to-be-released Biden administration report. So this is the report about the Presidential Security Memorandum 20. So according to this report, it says that it does not conclude that Israel has violated the terms of its use of U.S. weapons, according to 3 people who've been briefed on the matter. The CIA Director Burns returned to Cairo after meeting with Mossad and Prime Minister Netanyahu on Wednesday. He's now on his way back to Washington. According to CNN, he says the situation's complex. Ceasefire negotiations have paused. The delegation that Hamas sent to Cairo has now left for Doha. The purpose of entering Rafah and occupying the crossing is to thwart mediation efforts. We're still committed to our position regarding the latest Egyptian proposal. That's according to a Hamas official. Israel's delegation left Cairo as well. Israel's war cabinet approved continued IDF activity in Rafah, and 3 barrages of rockets were fired from Gaza at the Kerem Shalom crossing, through which humanitarian aid is delivered. I can't seem to get anything accurate. I hear Kerem Shalom is functional, but I haven't heard that aid is coming through. A 37-year-old woman was lightly injured by a shrapnel in a barrage of 5 rockets fired from Gaza at Beersheba in South Israel. The World Health Organization said that it only has 3 days left of fuel for its medical operations in South Gaza because of shortages, already forcing 1 of the 3 remaining hospitals in the city of Rafah to shut down. A vessel carrying aid to the pier that was built by the U.S. off sail, that was the aid from Cyprus, so that is still moving forward. And Prime Minister Netanyahu had an interview with Dr. Phil McGraw, and he admitted for the first time that there were failures, obviously, on October 7th. It's the government's responsibility to protect the people, and the people were not protected, and we have to admit that. He said he's had disagreements with President Biden before, and we've overcome them, and we hope that we can overcome them now. We will do what we have to do to protect our country. There will have to be a post-war civilian government in Gaza with Gazans that are not committed to our destruction, supported by the UAE and Saudi Arabia and other countries who want stability and peace. Opposition leader Lapid commented on the clashes which erupted on Wednesday with protesters calling for a hostage deal and Israeli police saying that the violence towards hostages' families is inexcusable. In Israel, 150 protesters blocked for 6 hours the entry to the southern town of Mitzvah Ramon in order to stop an aid shipment headed to Gaza from Jordan. The city's mayor also joined the demonstrator. Police said 25 protesters were detained, but the IDF did not have sufficient warning about the convoy's arrival. So 6 hours that shipment was delayed. Israeli police raided Al Jazeera's offices in the north in Nazareth after the Israeli government banned the Qatari channel. And in Lebanon, an Israeli strike on a car in South Lebanon killed at least 4 Hezbollah members. According to reports, the IDF said 2 launches from Lebanon fell in open areas and a hostile aerial target was intercepted in North Israel. 20 rockets were fired at the Israeli city of Kiryat Shmona, and the most recent of more than 4 barrages from Lebanon on Friday in North Israel. Israeli right-wing extremists chanted anti-UN slogans as others ignited a brush fire on the perimeter of UNRWA's headquarters in Jerusalem, causing extensive damage to outdoor areas. The video showed the fire as a crowd saying, "Let the UN burn down," and UNRWA is Hamas in Hebrew. Police officials said that those suspected of setting the fires were minors, likely below the age of criminal responsibility. Ireland, Spain, and Slovenia, and a number of EU states have said that they're considering acknowledging Palestine as a state on May 21st. And there's more about that at the UN. The General Assembly backed a Palestinian bid to become a full UN member by recognizing it as qualified to join and recommending to the UN Security Council. The resolution was adopted with 143 votes in favor and 9 against, including the US and Israel, while 25 countries abstained. There were 2 targeted ships that a spokesperson for the Iran-backed Houthis claimed the group targeted 2 ships with rockets in the Gulf of Aden, and Syrian air defenses shot down Israeli missiles fired from the Golan Heights. And finally, Churches for Middle East Peace put out a statement today welcoming President Biden's assurances that U.S. weapons will not be used in a Rafah ground invasion. And so we welcome that. We hope that President Biden will withhold offensive weapons until, the attacks that are affecting Gaza and the civilians in Gaza are brought to a halt. We still call for a comprehensive ceasefire, which is so desperately needed. As I've been here in South Africa, I've been learning a lot of quotes from Nelson Mandela, and one that I found very moving. He said, "We know too." And he was speaking, of course, of South African freedom and liberation from apartheid here in South Africa. But I feel this about liberation for those of us who are American as well. Nelson Mandela said, "We know too very well that our freedom is incomplete without the freedom of Palestinians." For those of us who are American, I think we know that also certainly to be true.